Good evening. Welcome to the Hollis Planning Board, January 22nd, 2025. We'll start the meeting with a call to order and then a roll call. We'll start my right to left.
Nick Hebert. Tom Witkowski.
Heather Sullivan.
Greg McPherson.
Seth Davis.
Butch Gannett.
And we'd like to welcome our newest addition, our secretary, Heidi Bernier.
Welcome.
Appreciate the addition. Next item on the agenda, correspondence. I don't hear any.
No, so we did get invitation if anyone wants to take the new planning board member training class that I think it's MMA puts on. I sent those to you guys. And then we did get that letter from Saco River Corridor, but it's not anything for discussion, so.
Okay.
And that meeting's happening concurrently with this one, so.
Perfect. Just want to give what that meeting is about.
Sure, so Saco River Corridor Commission, whenever they are making, whenever someone goes to them to make a change, or when someone's trying to do build on property that is part of the Saco River Corridor Commission, we wait for them to make a determination, usually. And in this case, a property owner had, prior property owners had gone to them and said, will you make this the most restrictive, I can't remember the exact names, the most restrictive type of zone, type of property so that it could not be built on. And now the property has changed hands multiple times, and someone has gone back to them, the current property owner has gone back to them asking if they can put it in the middle of the three categories that they have, which would allow for single-family home.
Perfect.
Yeah. So we get notified as a board, but I think everyone in the town got notified because we have the right to go to their public hearing, but their public hearing is right now.
Perfect. Next item on the agenda is reports. We have Dwayne on Zoom for any CO. No, hearing none. Does the select board have any reports, Mary?
I'm Mary Hoffman from the Select Board, and just a couple of things. The first thing I'd like to announce is that the Select Board is going to have a public hearing on the 5th of February, and then a special town meeting on the 19th, and it's to change the plan, the transition plan for electing the Select Board members. We have had some requests that people would like to have the opportunity to run for 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. Some people just feel like they would like to run for 1 year, and if they like it, then they could, rerun, and they just like to try it out. So we're going to be changing the transition plan on the original ordinance, so that's what that's for. The hiring committee has completed all their work of the job description, advertisement, salary and benefit package, interview questions, the timeline, and like I said, the update of the transition plan. We're just waiting to start the advertising process, which we're going to start this week. We're trying to advertise it around New England, both online and in newspapers.
Where will you be posting that, Mary? What online resources will you be posting that?
Bennett, did Bennett leave?
She's next
making a
door.
couple copies.
Oh, she sort of has the list. I think they're going to do Indeed, some of the big job sites, and then they're going to do the major paper in New Hampshire and some of the Portland and Biddeford, Bangor papers. So they have a whole list that she's exploring to see how much it's going to cost. Okay. Because we have a cap on what we can spend. And then the other thing is we started meeting, the Comprehensive Planning Committee started meeting, and we're on our third meeting. We're initially reviewing each chapter, and where we're going to really need your help is when we get to the plans for goals, policies, and strategies, because the chapter reviews are just really a review of data that they've collected up till 2024, and so it's a lot of corrections because they only had information up to 2015. But once we get to there's a whole section, it's about 19 pages, of like goals and how do you plan to implement your goal and strategies to accomplish the goal. We really need your help. We've been very fortunate. We have Butch on the committee with us, and Tom's been attending as a resident, but he's been very helpful because he sort of knows the history of what you guys have been working on. So as we explore things for housing and stuff, he can give us input on, where you guys are going also. So.
If they want to present those questions in writing and get them to Madam Secretary, we'd love to get those in advance.
Well, we can send you the whole little
Yeah, we have that thing.
It
Okay.
has like
I know if they had specific questions they had.
yeah.
I think they want help with drafting
Right.
policies, goals.
I mean, they
and
drafted
strategies.
it like, I would say that the Comprehensive Planning Committee probably sent it to Southern Maine Planning and Development around 21. So like they've got, one of them is that they'll do something with ADUs. Well, we've sort of done that, so it's like drafting language. We had a question come up. Tom was telling us about that Scarborough has like a 55 plus community, and that they went either before the planning board or somehow got so that they could do that with with limited lot sizes and stuff. And we were just going to explore how to do that and ask for some input.
Perfect.
But we'll send, what I'll send you out is the goals, objectives, that whole section. Because I
Okay.
don't think, the other stuff is just data. It's just, numbers.
Will the comprehensive committee be, so like when I think about it, like goals, that I feel like is the comprehensive committee like role to decide what the goals are, and then I think we can help with the strategies and the policies. Does that make sense?
I think,
Or you want
I think
input?
everybody needs to think about goals.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we'll show you what they have, and then you can think
I
about
was just looking at it
how you want to
today.
help us.
Perfect.
And then the Conservation Commission, if you didn't know, has applied for a $75,000 grant for a resiliency program. They've been working with Southern Maine doing an open space like web page where you can look up where the open spaces, where the public lands are in Hollis, but they want to do an open space plan, and they want to update the trails so that they have some bridges and boardwalks, because Indian Cellar in the spring is a little muddy in places. So, and that's it.
We did have one other report, or I guess it could have been correspondence from the admin secretary.
Mm-hmm.
She forwarded a scam email from another town in Maine, and would like to remind residents that the town will not send invoices out via email unless requested by the customer. If any residents receive a suspicious town email requesting money, they should report it to the department which the email claims to be from, or the select board.
Right.
So the town will not email you invoices.
We are getting a lot of, well, not a lot, but we get probably 2 or 3 scams a week. And a lot of times, if you look at, usually before we open something where we're not recognizing the name, if you look at the address, it doesn't make any sense. So, but thanks.
Thank you. What's that?
What did that mean?
Today. Next item on the agenda is review of minutes of January 8th, 2025. Everybody has those in front of you. Hopefully you had a chance to review those a little bit. One, January 8th, 2025, the second page in your packet.
It's actually,
Oh.
I have double meeting and it's double agendas for some reason, I don't know. I guess it's just
you.
me, okay. Yep, second page is meeting minutes from our last meeting. So the good news is meeting minutes are up to date to today.
And looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Looking for a second.
Second,
Any debate? Nick, how do you vote?
I wasn't here. Yes.
Heather?
yes.
Seth?
Yes.
Butch? Yes. So moved.
I was supposed to abstain there.
Next item on the agenda is old business. Robert's Rules of Order Policy. So we were lucky enough to get some of these nice laminated cheat sheets today. So I received the books last week or so, read through them enough to understand what we're trying to do here. And the major change that I see is in our voting strategy. the way that it plays out in the Roberts rules is instead of going from right to left one at a time, I'll call for a vote in favor of. All those in favor say aye, and all at once speak aye. Then once that is complete, I'll say all those opposed, nay, and then call out, yeah, ayes have it, nays have it. Event of a tie, since all of our votes are majority rules, if it's a tie, it's considered a nay. So the vote would not pass if it's a tie. So it has to be majority. Also in the Roberts rules, just the chair does not vote unless my vote would change the outcome of the vote. So if it was a tie, I could then vote aye to make it pass, or if it was one short of a tie, I could vote nay to make it a tie to make it fail. So that's how I'll proceed from now on. Any questions on that?
I have a question.
Yes.
So I understand the voting part, so I just want to make sure I understand. So there is, in order to debate is something that's different than just us just talking, right?
Correct. So it doesn't specifically call out how we talk prior to motions. It does have rules on how we debate once a motion has been seconded. So once a motion's been seconded, every member will get one chance to speak until everybody has had a chance to speak. Then everybody will get two chances, but you can only speak once prior to everybody else getting to speak, and then we can go back through the list again. And once everybody's spoken twice, up to a maximum of twice, then we'll stop debate and then take a roll call at that point. If the voice voting is unclear, there is not a clear winner, we'll take a second vote by show of hands to get an accurate count.
Sounds good.
That's everything else we're doing is pretty much on par.
Is there a time limit on debate
10 minutes.
per person?
Yes.
Wait, what does that mean? I can talk for 10 minutes.
You could.
Oh boy.
And if you'd like to speak during the debate, wait for the person to finish speaking, and then wait. I'll get my attention.
Yield.
No,
No, but you
I
have to,
yield?
you have to
Next
ask for
person?
raise
permission.
your.
Okay.
Get my attention is that you're looking to speak, a hand or a nod or some effect.
And then the end of meeting stuff, where it says before adjourning, the chairperson must. Do you have to go through all of those?
What are you
It's at
looking
the
at?
very, very back by the market.
I haven't had a chance to read this whole thing. Ending.
Because there's a lot of stuff there. I feel like it'll drag it out. We just say, would you like to adjourn? And we all go, yes. But you need to make a motion to reconsider and enter onto the minutes. You need to make motions to reconsider a previous vote, give notice of a motion, move to set a time for adjourned meeting if there isn't one already scheduled, formally state that the meeting is adjourned. You do that.
Well, you can, if the time for the meeting ends, he can say, is there any further business? And then he may say, I hereby adjourn this meeting, and the meeting adjourns.
Okay, so you don't have to do all the stuff that it says you must do.
As long as we get to the end of the time. So like if we
Oh,
ended
okay.
the meeting at like 8,
Yeah.
then I guess we would have to go through all this. But
Do we have to still do?
I don't know that you have to do, like, if this is done during the meeting, then maybe, like, we make important announcements, we do it at the beginning.
I think what you're talking about is the types of motions that could be made and addressed in what order they would come in.
It just says the chairperson must, so I just assume that you have to do it. So maybe you don't.
I
have
believe
to do
that's.
all those.
I just got this tonight, so I believe that how you're reading that is if there's unfinished business, then you go through these items.
Okay.
And unfinished wouldn't mean, like, say we make a decision, we have an application in front of us, they're coming back with more information. That's not an unfinished decision.
No.
Okay.
Say
great.
we're middle of debate and
Yep.
it's 9:00.
Yep. Okay, got it.
I'll continue to read and make sure we understand them further, but,
It's gonna take us a little while.
any questions on that? That being a policy from the town of Hollis, there's no need for motion on that item. Second item on the old business, ethics policy draft from the select board.
So I was thinking that because there is no vote, we don't get to vote on this, we don't have to come to a agreement as a board on what we give for comments back to the select board, then everybody should just do their own comments and give them to the select board. And then we don't have to take planning board time to talk about code of ethics that we don't get to recommend or change. Does that make sense?
Mary, please.
That code of ethics was just a rough draft from Ben, from our lawyer, and what we wanted to do was just gather people's input and then send it back to him as sort of a consolidated list of these are the concerns. I think many of the things that many of you mentioned at your last meeting, we also have the same concern with. And then once he addresses our concerns, then I'll send it back out with, like a limited time period to respond.
Yep.
Because it's just to get your input, because I think a lot of it was just very generic, and it was like, I'm not sure we want to say that, if you serve on the planning board, you can't for a year do something, or,
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
one of my things.
And sometimes, if I read it a couple of times and I said, oh, okay, it really doesn't say what I think it said, but then I'm not sure if it said what I think it said,
Well, and it really
So we
shouldn't
just
be a
wanted to
policy
get-
that's so confusing. That
Right, we
you
just
have to
wanted to
read
get it clarified and get everybody's input, and then we'll be sending it back out.
Yeah, so if everybody wants to get their inputs to Heidi, and then she can get a list to get, or do you want?
No, they
or-
just, everybody gives their input to
Or-
select board.
Yeah, does everybody have select board's emails?
I've already done mine.
Perfect.
Get mine into it.
Yeah, so we email them directly to the select board. Perfect.
We're working on just consolidating.
Yeah.
Do you have a deadline for the initial? Are you trying to get it on the warrant? Okay.
It's just a policy, so it's
Oh,
not-
yeah, that's right, sorry. Yep.
So if everybody can get their comments to the select board by next week, would be before the next select board meeting? 15th, February 15th. Perfect. Any other conversation on ethics? Hearing none. Next item on old business, growth ordinance draft from select board.
That is in your packet.
And Butch was kind enough to spend some time on this since our last meeting.
Yes.
Butch, do you want to give us a rundown of what you found?
Well, there was a few, 3 years that there was no information about number of housing starts. And we have them in there, 2015, 29, 2016, 26, and 2017, 30. And the way we arrived with those figures, we had a list of permits that were issued. I gotta think about this a little bit. We figured an internal plumbing permit would go with a housing start, okay, for the most part. There were figures on septic systems, internal plumbing, and electrical, I believe. Internal plumbing could be tied in most closely with any housing start, because any house is gonna have to have that internal plumbing. You could have just some repair in a bathroom, but that's gonna be pretty much nil. So that's how we arrived at these numbers. And one of the years, I think it was 2016, there were no figures at all. All there was the amount of money taken in for subsurface waste design. So we took the cost of that design and divided it into that figure, and that's where we came up with the 26.
Okay.
So that's how we arrived at those numbers. The other numbers are pretty well hard numbers, I think, off of reports.
So, my problem with this still stands that these numbers include ADUs,
Yeah, same.
and the way the ordinance is currently written excludes ADUs as the growth numbers. So, we don't really have a way of determining the starting number of growth permits that are gonna be allowed. The way that it's currently written.
We could put in a floor. Floor
We
or
could-
ceiling.
We could put in a floor, we could put in a hard number that we start with.
The number of growth permits?
Yeah.
Well, it seems like the average here is probably in the upper 20s.
But we don't know if those are ADUs though.
True, we don't.
So if 10 of those were ADUs, that number drops significantly. And then this whole growth ordinance isn't gonna do a thing. Because we're already 10 over what we have had in the past anyway.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? So if 20 of the permits were new, 10 were ADUs, and we're counting them all as potential growth permits, that means now we can have, 32 permits, and there's only ever been 20 anyway. So we don't really have the 5% cap that this is looking at. Then we have a 50% growth cap.
And it would take, what, 4 or 5 years to start averaging out to lower numbers in the houses. So instead of immediately capping it at 26 or 20 or whatever the number is, it would take 4 or 5 years to start reflecting actual numbers and bring it more closely aligned. Because if the numbers drop, if the housing numbers drop and
by 10.
right, and next year we have 8, and the year after we have 10, then that will lower the average, and it will be a correctly reflected average.
It wouldn't be for 10 years, because it's 10 years
Right.
average,
Well,
and the number is adjusted every 3 years.
Oh, it's every 3 years.
So
Yeah, it's
then-
every 3 years, but they'd go a 10-year average.
Yeah,
Every 3
so in
years.
3 years from when this is enacted, they would adjust the number, but they
Okay.
look back for the previous 10 years.
I understand.
so if
So it
this
would
was
take-
enacted in 2025, then it would go back and we'd have the missing numbers in that 10-year period.
We'd have to assume that.
Yeah, and then, but in 2028, when it got redone, we'd be out of that. What were the years for the missing numbers? 2016?
15, 16,
15,
17.
16, and 17.
So it really only affects, the missing number really only affects
This-
the initial. The ADUs being included affects throughout time.
I think the ADU was added in 2014,
Ah,
so prior to 2014, there was no ADUs allowed.
Oh, so that's really, so,
Well, they,
Well,
I
Well,
think
they
they've
weren't.
kind of always been allowed, they were called accessory dwelling units.
right, well,
Okay,
the
or-
ordinance as it stands previously was in 2014.
Okay,
So they might have been allowed, but they just weren't, they were just an addition to your house, or,
okay.
so do we not have a way to find out, like, isn't an accessory dwelling unit application different than a brand new house application?
I mean, respectfully, they didn't even have the numbers of those for 3 years.
Yeah,
So I
I-
think
unless-
trying to find the ADUs is needle in a haystack, and Butch did some fantastic
Awesome work.
investigative work
Yeah,
just to get the numbers he could get for.
and they're assumed, that's, great work, which I appreciate, but again, they're still assumed.
Right.
They're,
Right.
people could replace their septic system,
Right,
and that, now we're counting that as a new house, which,
Yeah.
it's all we have to go off of, so that's all we have to go off of.
right. I'm surprised at these numbers. To me, they're extremely low for housing starts. I mean, when we had the growth ordinance before, it was set at 50.
mm-hmm.
You know,
And
we
it was-
may be beating our gums here for something we don't even need to.
I think that's why the
Okay.
data's so
I
important.
mean, if we was to pick a number of 40 on growth ordinance, even considering ADUs, it doesn't look like we'll ever get to it.
Agreed.
So the other option we have is to include ADUs in the growth ordinance.
I thought I came across,
think you can.
I thought I
Probably
read somewhere
can't. I don't
that
think you
you,
can.
that they weren't gonna include that.
Well, it would
That's
be
how it's-
inconsistent with the state growth or, like, the state language, yeah.
Okay, so that's not an option.
Well, their idea is everybody that has a house on a lot is gonna be able to have an ADU on the same lot,
Yep.
so.
Yep.
So, what do we do?
What's,
No,
sorry, you go ahead.
that's, no, I was,
What's the positives and negatives? If we take the numbers that we have, we get an average of, that include ADUs, we get an average of what, 23 to 26?
it's 23, so that's another issue I have is rounding isn't
Yeah.
addressed.
Sure, but let's just try to make it
23.86 is the average.
20. So we'll call it 24,
Without the Butch's new numbers.
which
I can do some math.
somebody
real-
can do some quick math.
Butch's new numbers are 25. 25.53.
So with
So
Butch's
26.
numbers, 25.53, which technically we round up just like anything else.
I would, but.
Call it 26.
Yeah.
So 26 houses with ADUs.
Do you round up before you add 5% or after you've had 5%?
No, you just
Always
round
round up.
the total.
So,
And then add your 5%.
So 26 plus 5%?
Yeah. So 27.
27.3, so then we round up again? That
No, I
doesn't
round
make
down
sense.
because it's under 5.
I
20,
say
so
that
27.
I think you just round at the end.
I'm just trying to find a quick average.
Yeah,
Just to give, so call it 27. So average of 27 houses with ADUs.
plus 10%. So now you're at 30.
So now you're at 30.
And
Yep.
the old one was 50,
The old one was 50 and we never touched it.
and nobody was mad back then.
Well,
I mean, we touched it back, well, I guess we didn't.
there's a good chance if this ADU policy comes in, there may be an awful lot of people who wanna do that.
Well, we
We
can't
can't
restrict it.
stop them.
We can't restrict it.
There's-
State law.
Right? But if you could potentially get into a situation where you weren't able to issue any housing starts or individual house because you used everything up on
I
ADU.
get it. ADUs won't be included in that number.
ADUs do not need a growth permit.
Yeah.
Okay,
So everybody in
that's not
town
an
could put an
issue.
ADU in, and
Okay.
you could still build your 30
still
houses.
build a house, sure, okay.
So if that's the way we do it, 2020, 2021, we would have lost 15 houses in Hollis.
We would have lost 8 houses in 21. 22 would have been a bunch. But all the other years, if we average at 27, maybe 1 or 2 houses, assuming that none of those are ADUs.
Isn't it 30 because it's 5% plus 10?
We ended up at
Oh, yeah.
33,
Sorry,
That's one number,
sorry. I
so-
forgot about the 10%.
so 7.
But definitely in 2022.
Right.
We would have rejected half the builds.
We would reject it, 7 houses. So even if you put it in as it's written,
But we gained 7 houses in 2018.
Right.
Or we didn't issue.
right. So even if you put it in as it's written, it will start to correct itself and reflect correctly without, I think,
Still have to count not ADUs.
right, without, I believe that it won't drastically inhibit people from building their houses. That,
It'll actually be better, it'll be less intrusive at the start
right,
and become more
That's-
intrusive over as time goes on.
it'll become more reflective of the actual number.
Yeah.
the
And these
actual
new
purpose.
housing starts, these include anything was an approved subdivision, right?
Only when they pulled building permits.
Right, okay, so, okay, Yeah.
So you can build a subdivision and
Pull
then
no permits, right.
yeah, okay. I mean,
So, I guess that is a fantastic opinion. Like so if somebody puts in a subdivision with, call it 60 houses, they
you
can put
You
in
can.
the subdivision, they can get it approved, or try to get it approved, but they can't build the houses until there's allowable growth permits for them to use.
And like, because they have an approved subdivision, do they get do
Yeah,
they get
no one
2
else
years
gets
worth
to
of
build.
30?
And
How do we, then that's
Nope,
the
'cause-
standing in line issue.
you have to have a growth permit. Once you can't get a growth permit until you have
now you do growth permit, then you have to start building
So
permit.
you have a
ready.
buildable lot.
So the application for the growth permit, you must document establishing the applicant's right, title, and interest in the property. And if you don't have public water, a copy of a subsurface waste disposal system. So you have to at least have,
The basics.
you have to own the lot, and then
Well, the
Uh,
subdivider
you can,
is the owner,
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, so the subdivider gets, approval for a 60-unit subdivision, and then goes and wants to start building 30 of those units. Does that subdivider get all 30?
so.
If you can start within 3 months, right?
I think we should make some provisions along those lines.
I think the whole thing is,
Should it be
Okay,
per
for
project
instance,
and not?
a resident that living here in Hollis ought to be able to build another house if he wants to.
right, but
Or for his
how do you,
children.
if you have 30 for a year, how do you deal with that? This guy's ready, he's got 30 lots in this subdivision, so how many do you save for residents?
Well, is he building spec homes, or is he building a home for somebody, okay? If he's building a home for somebody, that's different than a spec home, okay? They'll have a little more priority, okay? And a resident of Hollis ought to have a little priority too, if their children wanna build a home, or whatever the case. You know,
Well, they'll only have priority until the 30 are used up.
I
Right.
agree. When we had the growth ordinance before, a family member did not need the growth permit to build a home. Okay? The growth-
Excluded
growth
from road
permits were
permits.
for,
Was
I
excluded.
guess we'll say non-residents. Be the easiest way to categorize it.
Yes. Well, we definitely don't wanna say subdivisions are excluded from growth, I mean, that would defeat the whole purpose.
Yeah, no one would want to build.
Well, no one would wanna build a home of their own, they would, yeah.
You have to get a building permit within 90 days of getting your growth permit.
Mhm.
Or you lose your growth permit, you have to apply again.
And your building permit lasts a year, right? You don't have to start the project for 1 year or 2 years.
I don't know off the top of my head.
So
Even
then
if
we've got a bunch
somebody
of building,
puts one.
and then we've got a bunch of growth permits
Yeah.
being held up, and, yeah.
But even if somebody bought, 60 acres and was going to turn it into 60 units, their project would be dead in the water when they can't pay a bunch of vendors because they can only half do their project
Right, but they can
'Cause
sit
they're-
on it for a couple of years.
for a couple. But there's
There-
a
there's-
projected plan that they got to sell so many.
I think we'd lose a lot of subdivisions. There's nobody that's gonna put the money up to put, hundreds of thousands, $1 million for a road for a subdivision, and then can't sell the lots because you can't build on them.
Right.
Yep.
Because you don't
That's
get,
assuming that the subdivider isn't also a builder and is actually building, like, I guess you call them spec homes.
Mhm.
Is the spec home, does that get sold to someone?
after it's built.
Spec home is not sold yet.
Right, but
I'm gonna
right.
build it,
Yep.
and I'm
and
gonna
you hope
own it
someone's gonna buy it.
until I sell it. And that might be before it's finished being built,
Mm-hmm, yep.
but it might be completed
But
and
it might
empty.
sit too, right? It could also just sit on the market.
Yes,
Yeah.
it could be completed and empty.
Yep. Okay. I mean, I still go back to, I'm not feeling that we even need it at all, so. We can talk all we want about 30 and 35 and 20 and whatever, but, we're not growing at the rate that people assumed that we were growing at.
I'd love to get the public's opinion.
Well, we will, because we have public hearings coming up.
I know, but we gotta get something that we can at least,
Yeah,
Come
well,
to
we can
a-
always change it. We have a,
Bennett. Linda,
Hey, can you guys hear me? This is Linda.
hi
yes.
Linda.
Hi, how are you? I just have a question. What if the person building the subdivision is a resident of Hollis? Then would they not have to apply for the growth? Is that what we're saying, potentially?
Not in my opinion. In my opinion, if you're a developer, you're a developer. If you're a
You
resident
don't-
of Hollis, that's fine. If you want to build a home, another home for yourself or one of your children, then maybe you wouldn't be in the growth permit category. But just because you're a resident of Hollis does, as far as I'm concerned, wouldn't mean you could have a development and
What
not
if it
have
was
to
a
have growth
development for your family?
permit. I didn't hear.
What if it was a development for your family, was the
Yeah,
question?
you have
Three-
like 6 or
three
7 family
unit,
members.
three dwelling subdivision.
If you're talking about a family compound,
Sure.
well, I
Do you even
guess
have to go
that
through
would fit the
subdivision?
bill.
For family?
But by
Yeah.
the same token,
3 units.
what you need to do, if you're gonna have something like that,
I can scroll off last year.
you have to put some time frame on it. For instance, I wanna build a house for my son, and I get it built, and he doesn't wanna live in it, so I sell it to somebody else, I've circumvented the growth permit thing. You would put
Right.
a 1 or 2 or 3 year requirement on that home that it has to be lived in by a family member before it could be put on the open market.
And then how do you police that?
How do you do that? You put that as a requirement.
Put in the deed.
Okay. Just something to think about as you're adding more and more restrictions to the growth. It's eventually going to be very difficult to follow up on all the requirements, right?
Well, it takes a lot of footwork, I think, to stay on top of it, but if you've got the stipulations in your paperwork,
Such a low
you can back it up with something.
the cost of building.
You know, and no matter what you do, people are gonna try to get around it, so you try to get some requirements in there where they can't.
Okay.
Cycle.
That was all.
Right.
Thank you.
We'll be back to, we're going to do that within the next 10
So
minutes.
I've had multiple ask, you know, come to me saying they were interested in having one of these ordinances in, so.
Without having any data.
Right, without having data. So I don't know if I'm ready to strike it off the table completely.
Well, the good news is you don't get to vote unless it's a tie. I'm gonna make a motion that we do not move forward with the proposed growth ordinance at this time.
Second.
Any debate?
Do we all vote at once?
Well, we can talk about it. It's pretty soon we're gonna have to step out on it and do something. And I think we ought to pick some numbers and go forward with it.
Motion on the table.
We're in debate.
As far as residents wanting to build, I would think that wouldn't be a large number. If you picked a number like 30 or 35 for a growth permit, you could say 5, or you could allow 5 resident or family members to be built, not counting the growth ordinance, but no more than 5. After 5, they have to fall in with the growth ordinance. And in the growth ordinance, you could put something like, 30% could be spec homes, and the rest have to be, specified owner. But it's hard to, you're just gonna have to pick a number out and go with it. That's my thought.
Any other debate? One quick, back to Robert's rules, the chairperson does not debate.
Oh, what?
Yes.
That's,
To not sway the vote.
We're all
You're
about to
not gonna
vote
sway
at the
me.
exact same time, so everybody say yes or no at the exact same
So
time.
there's-
so, no,
You
you
try
have
to
to say
catch it.
yeah,
And be
no.
clear on what
Great, I
yes
can't
means
wait.
and no
You, no,
means.
it's only, like, he's gonna say.
There's a motion on the table to not proceed with the growth ordinance as we currently have it in front of us.
So yay means
So
No.
all those in favor of not proceeding, say aye.
Aye.
Yeah. Aye. Not yes?
So
Aye.
all those opposed of not moving forward with a growth ordinance, say nay.
Nay. Hey,
I was aye.
You or aye?
I didn't realize.
didn't hear
I didn't realize that was the vote. I thought
That
we were
was the
explaining
vote.
the. Okay. Yes. Aye.
Should we do a hand vote just to,
I was gonna ask that. I was gonna request.
considering you don't
Gosh,
even know
this is
everybody's names?
Since there was not a clear winner, there's confusion, we'll move to a hand raise vote. All those in favor of not proceeding with the growth ordinance as is in front of us, please raise your hand now.
Right hand.
All those opposed, to not moving forward with the growth ordinance? The ayes have it. We will not be proceeding with the growth ordinance as is currently in front of us.
You vote if it's a tie.
I could vote to make it a tie.
You can vote to make it a tie, which would make it a,
Make it stay on the
Make
table.
would-
No.
make it stay on the
It
table.
would be a no.
No, because
I could have,
It'd be a no to your
So-
motion.
it would be
I
no to your motion, so it would make it stay on the table.
your motion would have lost,
Right.
which
Goodness
meant it would have
gracious.
stayed in, because it was a
Yes.
negative motion.
Yep.
Which maybe I should have said in the debate, but I'd say that I think Butch has a lot of really good ideas surrounding it, a policy that could probably work if it was all written out, but as it's written right here, I don't agree with this.
Okay, moving on. If anybody wants to present any ordinances in the future, they are welcome to. Oh. That it concludes the old business section of the meeting. New business. So we have new business of removed definition of restaurant and zoning ordinance.
Let's just change that.
Looking for a
That's the-
motion to change the, so, this morning I had a little bit of time to, since this was on the agenda, I had some time in the last minute to look for other definitions that were orphaned in our definition section of ordinance.
Does everybody know what we mean when we say orphan?
So when this,
Kind of made that up.
I thought it was.
I found definitions that did not relate to a zoning ordinance. It's this handout that Bennett just passed out
That's
about,
This one,
No.
right
Oh,
there
right there.
in front of you.
Bennett just passed this out, and it is underlined and struck through, I hope, yep.
Yeah.
So I went through this morning and found other definitions that were also, had no correlation to anything in the zoning ordinance. So I'd like to piggyback that onto the restaurant ordinance. So looking for a motion to change the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any debate? All those in favor of adjusting the agenda to include all definitions in zoning ordinance, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes all those opposed?
I didn't hear what you said.
So all those in favor of adding the additional definitions to the agenda to discuss?
I'm for it.
All those opposed, say, hearing none, motion pass. All right, so we will now discuss all definitions in the zoning ordinance.
So what I printed out for you guys, just so that you are aware, this is primarily the definition section, but we had agreed to put on the warrant 2 additional items in the zoning ordinance. Well, it's actually 3. We agreed to propose to strike the list in section 1.7 that says additional town ordinances because it's not complete, it's not maintained. So
The only
I kept that in there.
thing about that is there is some references to it, specifically junkyard and automobile graveyard.
what is the reference?
It
That's in the
says
left.
see automobile graveyard ordinance under automobile graveyard.
That is a separate ordinance. It's
Correct,
just
okay.
not listed
Fair.
on section 1.7.
Fair.
I'm fairly certain that just points directly to the state ordinance as well. So I don't even think,
There is an ordinance on the website.
Yeah, there is one. And then the other one that is not part of the, definitions is we wanted to remove letter of credit as a way of, getting your performance bond. So that's on the very last page 63. We had also, I believe, that as a board, we agreed, we wanted to strike that. Is that right?
yeah, no, you got it.
Might want to revisit that.
What page?
The last page, it's page 63 in the zoning ordinance.
I'm telling you, last week, we were gonna look over the zoning ordinance, the red line, and the added. Now we're on
Subdivision.
something else.
So we are gonna do subdivision. That is a regulation. It's not an ordinance. So it doesn't require us to put it on the warrant. So, we move that to workshop so that we can workshop without having to, be subject to Robert's Rules of Order. So what this is, Butch, is this is over time, as the zoning ordinance has changed, different language is used by different boards. And what this all, we'll go through each of them, but what this is designed to do is to just take out the things that have been renamed. Or that there used to be an ordinance about it. There's a couple things in here that are defined in the zoning ordinance and defined in the shoreland zoning ordinance. Well, you don't define things in two places. You define them in one. So take out the shoreland zoning definitions if they're not otherwise mentioned in the zoning ordinance. So that's all we're trying to do. So if we just leave, like if we just go to the first one, it's easier if I give an example. So the first one on here is agent of the planning board. That term is not used anywhere else in the zoning ordinances.
Except
What
for
term?
the
Agent of the planning board.
And what page are you on now?
This is page 7.
I mean, the restaurant one's a really good example. Food
Yep.
service establishment, restaurant is another definition.
Yep.
It's just
Yeah, so-
duplicated.
all these strike-throughs, Butch, are definitions that that are nowhere else in the ordinance
Or
except for in the definitions.
And they're just left
Okay.
over from
Great, if it's not in the
changes.
ordinance, it doesn't need to be in definition.
That's
what
what we're
this
trying
was.
to do. Yep.
Yep.
So
what
that's all these are, there's no other changes to the definitions other than, I had gone through it a year ago, Greg went through it. And I also checked these all against the subdivision regulations to make sure that these words weren't used in those. And I also checked it against the shoreline zoning regulations to make sure that these words weren't used in that or are defined in that. So basically what you do is definitions in the zoning ordinance, those govern, but the side ordinances, the cannabis business ordinance, for example, that defines all the things, it's definitions that apply to the cannabis business ordinance. You don't see them in this one. It just says, look at the cannabis
I understand
business
that,
one.
but let me just ask you, let's say, the term abutter
Yep,
is used and it's defined.
yep,
Yep.
And this is gonna be the zoning ordinance.
yep.
And in the shoreline ordinance, we use the term abutter.
So it's the
So what
zoning
do I
ordinance
mean?
governs.
What do I mean by this?
You have to go to the zoning ordinance to get
See,
it.
I don't agree with that,
So-
because then you gotta get another book out, and you gotta go through another book.
Well, technically, these are all, should be in one code. So if we really want it, so what it technically should be is all of these side ordinances that we have should all be part of one municipal code. That's how it is supposed to be done.
Okay,
So I agree with you, Butch, that's a very valid, point.
But that
I'm
makes
not
it-
sure, the challenge that happens is, what ends up happening is stuff like this. Something gets changed in the shoreline zoning ordinance, and no one thinks to go look at the regular zoning ordinance, and now you've got two different definitions of something. And that causes lawsuits. That's what, that's what I'm trying to avoid here is over a course of a long period of time, if you don't do these types of exercises, there's words in here that it's not even what it's in the use table with a totally different name. We all know what it means, except that's not, knowing what it means is not, you can't go to a court of law and say, oh, I know.
okay, I'm good with it. You
So-
don't have to explain it.
We'll just run through the list real quick. Since everybody listening does not have this list in front of them. Just make sure there's none I'm missing beforehand. So the first deletion was the additional town ordinances, section 4.7, automobile graveyard junkyard ordinance, communications structures ordinance, coin operated amusement device ordinance, parking ordinance, flea market ordinance, shoreline zoning ordinance, floodplain management ordinance, solid waste disposal ordinance, growth ordinance, special amusement ordinance, obscenity ordinance, subdivision regulations, ordinance for naming roads and numbering properties, town of Hollis building code. Some of those, or all those may exist, but it's an incomplete list. So
What page?
Page
Six.
6.
So all we're doing here is just removing the listing of additional town ordinances. We're not touching the ordinances themselves
Just removing the reference.
because no one keeps it up. So there are other ordinances, and there are some that have been
Removed.
repealed that, there's no reason to have the list.
Yeah. So then, starting on page 7, strike throughs, agent of the planning board, aggrieved party, alteration. Page 8, back office use. Page 9, channel flow, community hall.
I'll send this to you. I'll
I
send.
have it.
Oh, okay, great.
Page 13, groundwater yield. Page 14, landlocked. Page 18, resource protection zone, restaurants, riprap. Page 19, satellite receiving dish. Page 20, subdivision revision. Page 21, tributary stream, water crossing. Page 22, wetland associated with great ponds and rivers, wholesale. And those would be all the deletions that would be recommending.
So a number of these are in the shoreland zoning ordinance. The reason why they're stricken from this ordinance is because they are not mentioned in this ordinance. So they're definitions only for the shoreland zoning ordinance.
And you're suggesting to move one of them to shoreland zoning?
It's already in there, actually.
It is, okay.
So yeah, I probably just used the wrong words. Or, you know what? I think it's referenced in there. That's what it is. The definition isn't in the shoreland zoning ordinance, but the capitalized term is in the shoreland zoning.
Gotcha.
And it's not in our regular zoning ordinance.
So it should be, oh.
That's why I say move it.
So we'll leave.
Stupid question. What's the worst case scenario of not having the definition of something? I mean, it looks like everything's pretty covered here, but if I wanted to add a back office
I got you.
to my office,
So
and
if,
it's not defined here, am I not going to be allowed to build a back office?
no, if it's not defined, then there's no rules around it, frankly. I mean, that's one way of looking at it, I suppose. So back office is
So
the,
currently,
yeah.
there'd be no rules on it currently. It would just be defined.
So back office use, first of all, that's a use. It's not on our use table. We don't
Right.
have a use of that.
Yeah, I was just
And then
thinking.
also, we do have professional offices.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to have a office that goes beyond, like a back office, what is that? Like a back office? So when does something stop becoming a back office use and it's a regular office use? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But we
Agreed.
do have, I think it's called general,
Professionals.
professional offices. And-
I just meant for more of an example. Of
Yeah, no,
if-
it's a good
If
example.
we accidentally got rid of something that, later on somebody was like, that's the word I'm choosing to want to build this, and we couldn't fit it into a category, the reality of it is,
We have no performance standards affecting these anyway.
Yep.
I made a list and Heather double checked and did all the extra legwork to fix my mistakes.
yeah.
So we have other things now that don't have definitions, right?
Yeah,
We
so
have- we
that's
have
that's the
uses.
opposite. So that's the next. So
Of
we
course.
felt like we could. So cleaning this up just gives us a smaller body of things to work on because that's our next work. Is that we're going to look at: do we need to add uses? Do we need to add definition?
Performance
when this was
standards, right.
performance standards. When this was written, short-term housing didn't exist. So, as the board, we have to think about, are there things that we want to add? I think last time we added solar farm, which wasn't in here before and is now in here.
So, as part of a bigger project, I've also started working on, like Heather said,
Use table.
the opposite. Performance standards that don't have definitions. And then performance standards that are not on the use table. And then vice versa, uses that don't have a definition. and they don't have performance standards.
I guess it was more
Let's
of a
use
spin-off
restaurant
of-
as an
So
example.
this is kind of phase one of a bigger project that we've been trying to get to for 2 years now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry.
So with the restaurant thing, are you going to be eventually going through all the definitions, like for food service?
So, I mean, yes. So,
Because
we-
your current definition isn't accurate, so.
current definition of food
Food
service?
service establishment, yep.
Well, that's the definition we agreed to.
Well, you're
last
not,
year.
we're not enforcing it. Food isn't only serviced entirely within an enclosed building.
Correct. So, yes. So I think that's one of the things that we would, as a board, say if someone said, hey, this isn't right.
We have takeout and restaurant. So
I was gonna say, we had
restaurant
both.
is a subset of the first food service establishment,
Yeah.
and then takeout is below it. So
Right.
everything, from what I can tell, and I'm sure legal will correct us if we're wrong.
Well, no, they took out restaurant, right?
Well, no, we're proposing to take it out
Right.
because the term restaurant is not on our use table, and it is not otherwise referenced in the zoning ordinance. It's
So you're
called
eventually
food
going to be
service
reviewing
establishment.
all your definitions to make sure they're accurate. Okay.
That's phase two of this project. We're just trying to take off bites that we can handle
And
at
then the
once.
other thing I was wondering is, I know you had wanted to delete page 63 or something. I don't think I brought it up.
Letter of credit.
I was wondering if we can send that to legal, because I know he had a definite opinion about the only thing you should ever get.
Yeah, I kind of want
All
to
of
walk
this
that
goes-
back myself.
Oh, really? That
After-
would-
Because, and I don't remember which it was, but it was one thing you said you don't want to do anything else but this one
Okay,
item. I mean, I can send that whole section
Well, it's
to him.
performance bond, or I think it's a surety account. I
He
didn't
has
print out
specific
page
terms,
60.
so I'll
Yep.
send it to him and have him get it back to us, if that's all right.
yeah, that'd be great.
Yep,
Page
Thanks.
63 of the zoning ordinance?
yeah. It's just the last page of your little packet.
7.9.2, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, form of guarantee. So if we can just have Ben review a form of guarantee. I've since learned a little bit more about this and kind of want to walk that back a little bit.
Should we talk about it now since it's proposed?
Let's wait to hear Ben's input.
send him the whole thing.
Yep.
So leave it in like this so that
Leave
for
it in
public
for-
hearing, it's still in like this.
Uh,
Because we can make changes we can make changes after public hearing.
I would want to leave it in.
Yeah, that's what leave in the strike. Oh,
Nope.
so we're not proposing. So you want to unravel your motion?
Yep.
That sounds good.
I make a motion to not strike letter of credit from section 7.9.2C. So reverse the strike of letter of credit from that section.
Looking for a second.
I'll second it.
Second. Any debate?
What's the reason?
I can't debate.
Yeah, but you can just say why.
Somebody gotta answer the question.
Yeah.
I can't debate.
Okay, because a letter of credit is a fairly common item that is used in these situations, and it's, in my opinion, a reasonable, a business that gets a letter of credit from a bank. I consider that to be a trustworthy document. So that's why I would want to.
So that's why you wanna leave it in.
Yep.
Is there teeth to it?
What do you mean?
A letter of credit.
A letter of credit.
Yeah, it's irrevocable.
Who enforces it? A bond is a bond. We understand how to go after a bond.
Hmm.
We understand how to go after
I mean,
a
the town.
certificate of deposit.
Hmm.
How do we go after a letter of credit? Do we sue the
Go to
bank?
the bank,
Or do
yeah.
we sue the person?
Well, from a bank or other financial institution, you go to the bank.
So the town.
I think you
sues-
sue them both if you have to sue someone.
The town can't just go and address directly the person that issued the bond to get payment. They now have to go to court
Mm-hmm.
and fight in a letter of credit to get a letter of
I
credit.
don't think it helps in that case. I think it's if you went to court for a bankruptcy, you've got a letter of intent of what it was
Yep.
supposed to be used for, so it can't be given to other banks.
You have a preference. Yeah, you've got a preference then.
So it's bankruptcy court.
Guys, remember the rules of debate, please.
Oh, sorry.
Well,
Seth, anything?
No.
with
What's
a
your
letter
second
of
term?
credit, you still block off an amount of money. It's not, you don't just wave a letter of credit around and go to doing things. It's gonna be a specific amount when it's done, but it's gonna be a letter of credit.
Am I allowed, can I talk? or-
Tom?
Okay. As long as the town lawyer says that it's acceptable, that's kind of, it's way above my pay grade. So if the town lawyer says letter of credit is an acceptable thing and they're comfortable with it, knowing that they have to be the ones to enforce it, should it require enforcing, then I'm good with the town lawyer. So,
What was in there already?
correct.
Any further debate? So the motion on the table is to remove the strike through on letter of credit on section 7.9.2. All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Motion approved. Still getting used to this Robert's Rules thing. so
It's gonna take a little time. Make sure you keep reminding us. I'm gonna have a really hard time with the debate part.
We're gonna have to get a talking stick.
Just remember to get your conversation out before you make a motion.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so then, we
Don't
would
think
look,
we have to motion on.
we would look for a motion to remove the additional town ordinances list, section 4.7, from the zoning ordinance. We did not,
What are you looking for a motion
You said-
for?
looking,
To remove everything but
no.
Oh, is it 1.7?
We'll have two motions here.
Okay.
Looking for a
So
motion to
moved.
remove the 4.7 additional town ordinances list.
So moved.
Looking
So we're talking about the zoning ordinance?
Yeah, on page 6, number 4.7, this little packet that we got printed out.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the list of additional zoning
still need a
ordinances.
second on that. Second.
4.7.
No, 1.1.
1.7.
Is that a one?
1.7.
I was getting
Oh.
ready to tell you that it ain't the same in the zoning ordinance as what you're talking about. 1.7,
The
yeah.
strike through makes it look like a 4. I apologize.
Why don't we rehash your motion? Go ahead. 1.7.
Rehash
What?
the motion.
Wait, we
I'd li-
already have something on the table.
I'd like to amend my motion, or,
I'd like to amend my motion
yeah,
to be, to state, I'd make a motion to strike the language in section 1.7 of the Hollis zoning ordinance.
I second that motion.
okay, any further debate? All those in favor of striking section 1.7 additional town ordinances from the zoning ordinances, say aye.
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 All those opposed?
Nay.
Ayes have it. Section 1.7 to be removed.
Well, for
Or
the warrant,
Recommendation
yeah.
of the select board. Next motion should be looking for a motion to recommend that the strike-through definitions as provided be recommended to the select board for removal on the town warrant.
So moved. And that would be from pages 8 to
Nope,
page,
Page 7.
Didn't we do that already?
No, we didn't vote on this one yet. We talked about it, we didn't vote on it yet.
Okay.
from
Those are the ones
page,
you went through, the whole,
Yep.
you listed them all, okay.
page 7, starting on page 7 through page
21,
22.
22.
22.
Looking for a
of the zoning
second.
ordinance.
Second.
Any debate? All those in favor of recommending to the select board to remove the definitions as stricken through as provided for the June town warrant, say aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it, motion moved.
So, we still have to do public hearing on these, so we shouldn't have recommended. Right? I mean, we'll keep it as it is now, but it can be revisited, right?
Yeah.
What's the word for that?
Amend.
Yeah,
So, yeah, Heather's correct, we need to have public hearings on these.
the next 2 meetings.
Yeah,
Reconsider.
so we could reconsider if we have public comment on these after the fact. I think that's a good way to move forward with these potentially, so we don't have to come back to them.
And we've already done so on the affordable housing, so I will get that language into this. Affordable housing is edits to the zoning ordinance, it's not a new ordinance.
Yep.
So I will get that in as well, and then I will get them to Heidi and Bennett, because I think we have to post for public hearing. Do we have to motion for?
That's on the agenda.
Okay.
Next item on the agenda is public comment. Anybody on Zoom or in audience like to speak? Hearing none. Next item on the agenda, plan for next meeting. Schedule public hearings. So for all potential items to go on the warrant, we need to have 2 public hearings. So our next 2 meetings are February 12th and February 26th. Looking for a motion to schedule 2 public hearings for all items we have recommended to be on the June warrant, 1 February 12th and 1 February 26th.
So moved.
Looking for a second.
Second.
Any debate?
Can we define what item? So it's the changes to the zoning ordinance, floodplain management ordinance, and it's not full.
Definitions?
Well, that's zoning ordinance. Those are,
We can't
that's a
debate.
whole thing. Affordable housing.
Yep.
So there'll be 3 items. It's updates to zoning. Then it's updates to floodplain management. And I think separately, so, and then the addition of affordable housing.
So you're saying the first 2 are one subject?
Nope, we have to have 2 for all, so we'll hold 1 for all, and hold a second for all.
Got it.
But there'll be 3 items that we're proposing for changes to the warrant.
Correct.
I'll do the little write-up that says, here's what we changed.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further debate? All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
All those opposed? Ayes have it, motion moved.
The public hearing is gonna be before the planning board meeting.
It's during the planning board meeting.
At
It's
7.
during me, so 7 o'clock.
And those will be posted 2 weeks in advance,
Okay.
and it'll also be in our agenda as well. So it'll be during the regular scheduled
Okay.
planning board meeting.
I have red lines of office, so.
So that concludes all the items on our agenda this evening. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'd like to ask a little
Yep.
something first.
Yep.
We were gonna go through changes to the zoning ordinance.
Yep, so
We decide we're not gonna do that?
the next item on our agenda is a workshop.
Good
So
deal.
we'll close the planning board meeting and move into a workshop, and that's the first item on that
Move
agenda.
to adjourn the planning board meeting.
Second, debate, all those in favor, say aye.
Yes.
Aye.
All those opposed? The planning board meeting of January 22nd is adjourned at 8:12 PM. And we move into a workshop